Hello, welcome to part 4 of my discussion on 2nd Chronicles 20. And in the previous video, I spoke about that we could relax. The battle was not ours, it's the Lord's. And if you want to watch that video, you can click on the link in the description box below. Well, today we're going to continue on in 2nd Chronicles 20, verses 16 through 17. And in the preceding verse, we see that God speaks through somebody in the assembly, and he's giving him a message to give to the people. They sought the face of the Lord, and God responds. So here it is. We're going to continue hearing what God is speaking. So verse 16 through 17 reads, "Tomorrow march down against them." And the them that's being referred to here is the enemy, right? He says they will be climbing up by the pass of Ziz, and you will find them at the end of the gorge in the desert of Jeruel. You will not have to fight this battle. Take up your positions. Stand firm and see the deliverance the Lord will give you, Judah and Jerusalem. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. Go out to face them tomorrow, and the Lord will be with you. Now, I find that this is such an interesting part of the text. God promises them that he's going to fight for them, but he still requires something of them. He still expected them to participate in the process, right? So just because the battle belongs to the Lord doesn't mean that we get the opportunity to sit and just twiddle our thumbs. No, God is still expecting something of us. He still expected them to go out and face the opposition. They did not have the opportunity to just go and relax. So we see here that yes, the battle is the Lord's, but we have to do something. And I think about just other examples in scriptures with how God promised the people, hey, you know what? They were going to be able to conquer Jericho, but they couldn't just sit and say, okay, whatever. No, they had to actually go out, position themselves, and there was some marching going on. Not just one day, but there were days involved, right? Where they had to go ahead and do what the Lord told them, even though he had already promised them the victory. God promised the children of Israel deliverance from the Egyptian, right? And deliverance from slavery. But they couldn't just sit there and be like, okay, God, just transport us, to the promised land. No, there was a process that they had to go through. They had to get prepared, and they had to literally march out of Egypt. I could go on, but I think you get the point. So ask yourself, God, what do I need to do to position myself? Have I just been sitting here saying, oh, I don't need to stress. The battle is not mine, it's the Lord. And I'm not moving in the direction that God is telling me to do. God is very specific with his people here. If we go back to verses 16 and 17, he tells them he says, tomorrow march down against them. Then he tells them the specific locations that they are to go to, right? So it wasn't just, oh, the battle is mine. Don't worry, you don't have to do anything. There has to be movement. And one thing that I realized is that it takes faith to actually position yourself, because you have to believe that God is going to fight for you. So if the faith is not there, because really faith is a position, right? It's a position that you take. So if the faith is not there to believe that God is going to move, of course you're not going to do anything. You're just going to sit there and be paralyzed by fear. And I can think of, even in my own life, how God has spoken certain things to me and promised me the victory in certain areas against the enemy, and because of fear, because of my lack of faith, right, I just kind of I don't really move forward. I don't take the first step forward in which God is telling me to, and I become paralyzed. So again, faith is really a position. I can't really position myself unless I believe that God is going to do what he says he's going to do. I can't really position myself unless I believe that God is really going to fight for me. And I love how in Hebrews 11:1 it reminds us that faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. So even though I can't see the victory, God, I am believing you. You've spoken this thing, and I'm going to have faith, and I'm going to go and move and position myself exactly how you tell me to. Now, here's the thing. Yes, we position ourselves, but let's make sure that we don't do the most in terms of when and how we position ourselves. Let's make sure that we don't get creative, take matters in our own hand, and then end up doing more than what God is telling us to do, or even shifting the game plan altogether in terms of what the positioning should look like. Again, in this specific verse, God specifically tells them when to leave. He tells them the day. He says tomorrow. This is when you go down, and this is where you're going to go. He gives them the exact location. They didn't get creative. They obeyed what God told them to do. They obeyed his commands. And a lot of us, we get very creative and we're like, okay, I'm gonna position myself and then I'm gonna add a little extra to it. And let me just say, many of us, God promises us deliverance from our enemy. And in the process of him delivering us, instead of us moving forward and positioning ourselves the way he's telling us to, we, like Lot's wife, end up looking back, right, to the place that God is delivering us from, to the place where the enemy dwells. Instead of us saying, God, I'm going to move forward and position myself in this way, we end up looking back and get destroyed in the process. So I think we have enough examples in scriptures of what happens when we position ourselves, right? And we're going to see here in 2 Chronicles 20 what happens when the people fully obey. But I think we also have the other side of the narrative. What happens when we choose not to obey what God tells us to do and position ourselves the way he tells us to position ourselves so that we can have victory over the enemy? So I want us to just really be honest with ourselves. God has promised you that the battle is his, but have you just been sitting there not doing anything? And if you're doing something, are you doing the most? Are you doing more than what God has asked you to do because you feel like your plan of positioning yourself is better than what God recommended? Really sit and ponder these questions. And I also recommend that you go back and you review the scriptures that I suggested, that I referenced throughout the video, because it really helps to give a greater understanding to the principles that were brought out from this study. So I am going to end there today. All right, you be blessed.